Okay, today we're going to go over the second essay you do in this class, your analytic essay or analysis, as some people would call it. And for this essay, first thing I think we need to do is discuss exactly what an analysis or an analytic essay is. Really, what you're doing is you're, breaking things down. Again, do not confuse this with a compare and contrast. You're not comparing and contrasting two things. Don't confuse it with a review, which is your next assignment in this class. You're not giving me really your opinion on this, right? You're not arguing something here. What you're really doing is breaking something down. So we, consider when we write, right? We're writing to educate, to inform, or to entertain. And here, what you're really doing is you're looking to inform. You want to take something and make it understandable and sort of tear it into parts and break it down in a way that someone who may otherwise not understand it would have a better view of that. Now, think about it this way. We analyze things every day, okay? For instance, this video I will not appear on. Why? Well, I had to analyze the situation. First off, I need to shave my head. I need to clean up, put on correct, appropriate clothing, that kind of thing. So I analyzed the situation and decided that given everything, it would be best to do an audio with slides and talk over those. So, I analyzed that. You analyze, your relationship. Should you stay in it? Should you not? Again, that sounds like it's argumentative, but here we're talking about breaking down those pieces. Maybe analyzing how you could fix your relationship would be an analysis, or just analyzing what is wrong with your relationship. Okay, so again, you constantly analyze things all the time, and so that's all you're going to do here, and the sky's the limit on what you choose. Now, let's move into that. How to choose your topic. There is no requirement here, okay? What does that mean? That means you can analyze anything you want to analyze. Think of it this way, which we'll talk about audience in a second, but, think about explaining something to me. Again, you're not addressing me directly, but explaining something that I might be interested in. In the past, I've had students come by my office who, I just don't know what to analyze here. And I had one student who was, I think, 19, and his girlfriend was older, in her mid-40s. And, that's something I'm not familiar with, right? I've never been in a relationship with someone twice my age. And so, he analyzed for me and explained to me, not directly, right? He's not going to say you or Professor Lloyd Norlakis or whatever, but kind of broke down the things that people who aren't in that kind of relationship would not have considered. Okay. Again, the aspect of her having kids, about, again, not just looking at the obvious stuff like thinking he's in it for money, she's in it for a trophy boyfriend, but the other aspects that make things more complicated, that he didn't understand a lot of the references to the things that she made because, she was around a lot longer than he was, and that kind of stuff. I've had people analyze what it's like being in an interracial relationship. Again, I'm kind of focusing on relationships here, and that's not the case. There are a ton of different things that you can analyze. You can analyze yourself and break it yourself down. You can analyze another person. You can analyze a piece of art. You can analyze just about anything, and we'll get into those ideas in a second. Now, what we want to look at is what are the characteristic features of an analysis. And in your book, this is on page 206. Number one, a question that prompts you to take a closer look. Okay, so again, your thesis isn't a question. You know that, right? It's always written in a declarative sentence form. But think, what prompts you to take a closer look? I don't know if y'all been following this debate, but there's been a lot of debate recently on adding the color, the gay pride flag, right, is rainbow, right? And there's been a lot of Facebook discussion and debate because in one of the pride parades they added black and brown to represent sort of people of color, and so a lot of people, you know, again, you always have the white people who make the point there's no white stripe, which I find kind of silly. But at the same time, from a graphic design perspective, the colors of the rainbow, when you add black and brown, kind of make the flag ugly that was otherwise colorful and interesting, which is, my issue with it. And so what I did was I kind of, analyzed, again, the flag, the history, what each color represents, all of the rest of those things, and I would look at that. That would be one of the things that I would analyze, and so break it down in a way to explain it, so that if someone didn't know anything about the rainbow flag, they would go, "Oh, okay, that's what this stands for. That's where this came from," and that's kind of the question you're taking a closer look at. Number two, some description of the subject you're analyzing. Again, you don't want to go crazy. This isn't a book report, okay? And by that I mean, when you did book reports in elementary and junior high, you pretty much just did the Cliff Notes, right? You didn't do any real analysis. You just gave me an overview. That's not what you want to do here. But you need to give your readers of your essays enough of an overview so they know what you're talking about, okay? So if it's a song that they're unfamiliar with or an artwork, you're going to have to do some description of the subject you are analyzing, some surface level stuff. That being said, again, you've got to draw a closer look, and so that's what number 3 here is, evidence drawn from a close examination of the subject, okay? So again, you're really going to look here a lot deeper into what you're talking about. That is the key to an analysis. Dig deeper. Go in directions people, again, when I read the essay the student wrote on dating someone who's 20 years older, again, that's what was so impressive about the essay. He could have repeated a whole bunch of stuff that I already knew, right? But rather than do that, what he did was he took a much closer examination, and I went, I had never thought about that. One of the interesting things I thought in one of the essays I had a student do on interracial relationships is, I really expected her on, the looks people give them and the judgment and the problems within the family. And one of the paragraphs that she took a closer look that I had never really considered was the cultural differences she had to deal with. Again, she was African American and her boyfriend was white and Caucasian. And so, just dealing with sort of how his family behaved differently than hers did. Now, again, you can't, what she was smart enough to do and what you need to be able to do if you're doing something that personal, okay, which it doesn't have to be. Again, you could analyze LeBron James, okay? It could be something way less personal. But what she was very careful to do is make it clear that this was in her situation, and not to paint a broad picture of all interracial relationships, but to make it clear that this was from her sort of perspective. And so here, the question of do we use I and do we not, really, it depends on the situation, if it's appropriate or if it's not. You want to know, is insight gained from your analysis? Ask yourself, do you give your reader any insight that they didn't have before? If I read it and I feel like I have not learned anything, that it has not been broken down, that I don't understand it any better, then, what's the point? Okay. What was the reasoning behind, what me even bothering reading it? And then finally, clear and precise language. And we'll discuss that a little more later in this video. Now, what kinds of analyses do we have? Our analytic essays. We have rhetorical, and that when we would be, rhetoric is when we use generally language to convince people of something. And so that may be, again, if we look at Living Like Weasels, Annie Dillard is kind of making an argument about how to live, right? And so if I were analyzing that essay, that would be sort of a rhetorical piece. So again, art can be rhetorical. It can be sort of sending a message if we're talking about that message, political speech, even a political candidate. Those things could be rhetorical. A process analysis is when we sort of analyze how something is done, but it's not really a how-to, right? I mean, that would be that first part, that second question I think that we looked into. Let me flip real quickly. I'm sorry, the second one, some description of the subject you're analyzing. That would be sort of the process, but the analysis would be sort of why. Why do we do that step as we're taking our reader through the process? Causal. That's when we look for the cause of something. A great example of this, which was nominated for the National Book Award, which is really interesting, is the 9/11 report, which took years and several writers and politicians and people. It was a non-partisan report on what led to the events of September 11th. And that was a causal argument. I mean, not argument, a causal analysis. They just broke down basically where our government had broken down and allowed this event to happen. And so what led to that? Okay, again, there's a great book by Randy Schultz called "And the Band Played On." And what he does is he basically he analyzes the AIDS crisis and really it's a causal analysis. What led to it getting so far out of control? Again, AIDS could have been stopped or certainly slowed down much more quickly than it was. And so what led to that situation? What led to the recession of the Bush years? What led to Trump was elected, but what led to Hillary Clinton not becoming president, okay, or Donald Trump becoming president, okay, or what led to your divorce, okay? So that's causal. Data analysis is when we are, using data heavily to sort of break things down. Again, I had a student made a huge error last semester. What he argued was that LeBron James was the greater basketball player than Michael Jordan. And what that did was it became a compare and contrast essay, which we don't want here. We want to make a single analysis. So what he could just do is analyze the career of LeBron James, right? And that's going to be data driven. We're going to use statistics. How many championship rings, how many wins per game, how many, all of those sports ball figures and things like that, that we could use as far as data driven. Now, you want to be really careful here as far as data goes, because one of the things, now, we're not making an argument. I cannot be clear enough here. You are breaking something down, okay? You're not trying to change my mind about something. You're trying to inform me about something, okay? Now, if I change my mind, let me come to that decision. Sorry, my dogs are barking. Let me come to that decision in my own head, but it's not your job to lead me there. But one of the things I do want to address is what we're going to talk about later in the semester, which is called argumentum ad populum. When you're using data, one of the things you never want to use is statistics showing public opinion, okay, approval rating and things like that. That's called the bandwagon approach to or logical fallacy bandwagon approach, or what it's a form of argumentum ad populum, which basically, because most people think this, it must be true. That's not the case. Okay, something does not necessarily become true just because the vast majority agrees or disagrees with it, or even there's different versions of argumentum ad populum. But the point is, we want to look at really empirical data. And if we're looking at opinions, again, there we would want experts and not just, the general public. And finally, visual analysis. Don't return in a paper you did for your art history class where you analyze an artwork, because the format that they do papers in for those classes generally does not fit what's correct for here. But you can still analyze something that is visual. And this doesn't fit into this category, but again, also, this would include, other forms of art like songs and like poems and those kinds of things, okay? Now, back to this using precise, clear, precise language here. Again, you want to be very, very, very specific here in your language. You want to avoid again, by clear and precise, you want to write this with a scalpel. And you don't want to use words that are very subjective. Again, the argument the student made, again, was a fair and contrast essay, which was an error in the first place. But he wanted to argue that LeBron James was better than Michael Jordan. Again, better is a terrible word, because, I mean, what necessarily defines better or worse, right? And he didn't do a particularly good job of doing that, even if it had been a compare and contrast. You want to, be specific with that language, be clear. Sometimes we're very vague in our language, and that's purposeful. Again, there was a quote, Elaine Stritch, my cousin and I were debating this the other day, Elaine Stritch, who died, but she did a one-woman show that won the Tony. And the very first line of it, she's a famous Broadway actress and singer. And the first line when she comes out on stage is she says, well, it's like the prostitute said, it's not the work, it's the stairs. Okay, now, notice when you hear that, we both interpreted it differently. My assumption, right, is that what she meant, what the prostitute was saying was, it's not, what she's doing for a living. We both agreed with that, right? I heard stairs as S-T-A-R-E-S, right? That people were looking at her, okay? Because she's a prostitute. My cousin interpreted it as S-T-A-I-R-S, which meant, again, having to go up and down the stairs to all of these, apartments that these men lived in, the walking around, okay? Again, that can be a great thing in language. Now, there we would know from the written page which one she meant. But, sometimes words can be vague, have dual meanings, and that kind of stuff. And we don't want that in analysis. We want it very, very clear. I don't want the language to be convoluted. Okay, you want to pick good, strong words, and not words that are that have multiple connotations. Remember, words have connotations and denotations. Denotations being dictionary meanings, connotations being sort of the interpretation that we have. That even though words have similar meanings, the example that I use in class is thin and skinny. And what I will do is I will have my students close their eyes and imagine someone who is thin, a woman who is thin, and then a woman who is skinny. And those words have very similar denotations. They have very similar dictionary meanings. But when we finish discussing it, what we'll learn is the students feel that basically the words that they'll use to describe the skinny woman are words like emaciated, bony. Basically it all adds up to unattractive. Whereas with thin, they'll use words like athletic, svelte. Words that add up to attractive. And so again, that's where we wouldn't want to use skinny and thin. We would want to use very specific words like underweight or emaciated. Okay, audience. Keep in mind that you do not want to bore this person. Okay, now this person in this situation is me, but it's not always necessarily me. And you want to think of again, paint with a broader stroke. You want it to think anyone could be reading this essay, not just me. But keep in mind, again, you need to not only take that closer look, but give me that basic background information. Again, I used to do a process analysis paper only, and lots of students would want to write stuff about cars. Well, I don't have any understanding of cars, and they would assume that. Computer people tend to want to analyze things and assume that I know what all these computer terms are, and that the audience would know that. Okay, we have this term jargon. And a lot of times in class, I will say, what does jargon mean? And everyone will basically say slang, and that's not what jargon is at all. Jargon is language, okay, specific to a field, okay? So as a former journalist, we have very specific language: byline, pica, flag, colophon, masthead. These words that in nursing, right, in medicine, in computer, we have this language that we use, these words that are very specific to those fields that the common person doesn't understand. And so you can't just say to me next to the carburetor, right, if I don't know what the heck a carburetor is, okay? If you're writing about sports, you can't just say, as a volleyball referee, I couldn't just say, a dump, right? We have a dump you can look up if you want to. but it's a way an attack hit that you just kind of flop the ball over the net. And if I just said she committed a dump, right? You're going to have a whole lot of different interpretations, and so you've got to consider that audience. Are they going to understand what you're talking about? And then again, consider, are they going to be interested? Okay. Again, you don't want to bore the bejesus out of your reader. You want them to read it. And in your first essays, y'all did a really great job of that. I don't remember a single one thinking, I don't care. And again, that's easier to do with a narrative than these others. But again, you want to make your reader care, and that's key. Again, what is your purpose? We entertain, right? We inform, we persuade when we write. Your purpose here should be, first and foremost, to inform, okay, to educate. But that being said, that does not mean it doesn't need to be to entertain, okay? And again, a lot of times, being an academic, I get entertainment from that education, okay? When something's informative, I find that entertaining. But there are other ways here to entertain by making it interesting. That doesn't mean you're telling jokes and that kind of thing. One of the bigger things here, though, that you want less of is that persuade, right? Your point is not to persuade me of anything. Don't argue. Here's a perfect example. Again, Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. I have a lot of students. That's something very few people understand. What you would do when you would analyze that is your whole point is not that it was a bad idea and we should repeal it, or it's a good idea and we should keep it, right? What you would do for me there is just kind of break it down and let me make my own decision. Now, we know that parts of it aren't great. We know that parts of it aren't bad. That's not the point here. The point is to take me through the bad and the good and not focus on one and trying to do that. Now, again, you don't have to, be completely non-neutral, right? If you're going to, analyze what went wrong to make Hitler do what Hitler did, right? Then, we know what Hitler did was wrong. There's no reason to, be apologetic or neutral on the subject, okay? Does it need a works-cited page? The answer to that is if you use any outside sources that aren't common knowledge, things like statistics, then yes, and you need to contact me or at least know what you're doing as far as not just a works cited page, but as citing. If you do something that's not as simple as a relationship, but you do any kind of sort of media, whether that be a short story, an essay, a television show, a song, an artwork, a play, a movie, you have got to do a works cited page, okay? Now, I gave you the information in that little handbook that I've posted on the MLA 8, but that may not be enough. And so you may need to call me and say, hey, how do I need to do this? I'm going to analyze the song Battle Cry by Angel Hayes, right? And I'd say, okay, here's how you cite that, okay? And we would talk about that over the phone. And again, it's one of those things I wouldn't YouTube because MLA, you can, just make sure it's MLA 8 because we changed a little more than a year ago, and a lot of what you're going to see is MLA 7, 7th edition, which is old. How do I organize it? Introduction, body, conclusion. You need a clear thesis that says, what you're going to analyze. And then what you're going to do for your body, again, which needs to be 3 or more paragraphs, is you're going to break it down into points of analysis, okay? Again, points of what we're going to break down. And so, again, my student who did the relationship with an older woman, he broke that down into, he had a paragraph about, again, the personal, right? The personal differences about that he didn't consider, that that most people don't consider, like him not knowing stuff that she knew, her not knowing current stuff that he knew, those kinds of things. Then sort of the societal, and again these were common things that we would think of, but he did it in ways that I didn't understand. I didn't really think of. For instance, going out to eat and again them assuming he was her son, right, being called that, and other things. But again, he looked at that much deeper than the obvious ones you would think about. Again, whenever they go out to eat, you wouldn't think about, generally the man has handled the bill, but of course she's always handed the bill, and so by the staff server, and so things like that. Again, he did a paragraph on the differences between his family's reaction and her family's reaction. And those were kind of interesting. And of course, he added one of the aspects that he added there, which could have been a separate paragraph. It didn't have to be three. His was 3 body paragraphs, not necessary. It could be 4, it could be 5. But he did a section in that part on her having, kids his age and what you had to deal with that. And so again, you want to pick your points of analysis and then break them down. So go into that and say, okay, here are the specific things that I'm going to look at. So again, if I were going to do a song, you've got to find, or a poem or a relation, anything, you've got to kind of find those common areas that you're going to break down, those points of analysis. Don't just kind of dig through. And that was the biggest error I saw on the first essay, was this just sort of dump everything together and let's not worry about organization. You've got to go into this one with a plan. Finally, when you are done, here are questions you need to ask yourself. Is the question that prompted your analysis clear? Does the introduction capture the audience interest? That's a big one, okay? You need to get me into that essay in a way that I want to read it. Again, maybe, start with why. Of course, you're going to introduce your topic, but then why is this significant? Why should I give a crap about you analyzing LeBron James, right? Why is this substantial? Is the subject described enough in detail for your audience? That's key. Again, so if it's something a little more obscure, do I have the basic fundamentals to understand what you're talking about? What evidence do you provide to support your point? Okay, so again, this makes it almost like it's an argumentative. What it really means is, are you using evidence that's good here that supports the analysis, not an argument? What insights have you gained from your analysis? Again, you're not going to do that with, well, this is what I learned. But when you're done, if you haven't learned anything new, what's the point, right? And so that's what one of my student who did it on the relationship thing said. I really had never considered this part of it until I did this analysis. I really looked at our relationship a lot more closely. I actually had a student, this sounds awful, years ago when we did this assignment, and she thanked me at the end of the semester. She analyzed her marriage. And again, in her paper, she just broke down her marriage, right? What was the issues with her marriage by analyzing it. And at the very end of the semester, she thanked me and I didn't remember who'd written the paper, but she kind of said, I want to thank you. My divorce became final today. And I said, what are you talking about? She said, well, after I wrote that analysis paper, I just realized we weren't compatible and I needed to get a divorce and move on. And so, again, yeah, it's interesting, but that was the insight she gave. If you've cited any sources, are they credible and convincing? Again, you need to talk to me if you're going to do that. Have you addressed other perspectives? Okay, that's key. So again, it makes sure that it's not argumentative here. And if it is, or if it becomes that way, that you're creating both sides. How would you describe your tone? How is it organized? Did you consider style? How does the essay conclude? And finally, your title. Did you think about that title and give it an interesting title that is not, again, biased? All right. If you have any questions on this essay, give me a call for 750 words like all the other essays. And I will see you in the next video.